So I see a question, what is everyone supposed to be showing on the screen? Just the four panelists will show up on the screen. So you should be able to see the four of us and hear us, but otherwise you won't hear yourself or other attendees or see yourselves. Great question though. All right, well, just since I want to be mindful of time, why don't we get things started? So thank you again for everyone who's joining us. We're excited about tonight and are excited to cover some really important content. I will turn my video off just for less distraction.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm Ann Krisnick. I'm the Executive Director of the Joint Religious Legislative Coalition. And this is the second of our sessions to help people learn about the faith traditions that make up the JRLC. We're really pleased tonight to have two of our board members with us. We have our Vice Chair, Bob Rubini, who is from Bet Shalom in Minnetonka, and Sally Lorberbaum, who's here with us from Temple of Aaron. And we're going to learn about Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are the high holidays in the Jewish tradition. We're going to start with some wonderful sharing about what the holidays mean and learn from Sally and Bob about some of the things that they do with their family, that they do personally, the personal meaning of the holidays to them. We'll have an opportunity for questions and answers from you, so please type your questions in and we'll be getting to those later. And we're going to close with a traditional prayer that is used at the Yom Kippur services, and that will be done by Eli Newell, who was originally from Temple of Aaron as well. He's currently living in Chicago, but he'll start with that prayer in English using the Hebrew Bible. It's from Isaiah. And then he'll close that at the very end. He'll be saying that prayer, singing that prayer, cantering it in Hebrew. So I want to thank Sally and Bob and Eli for being with us. We are very pleased to have them here. But I also want to take a moment to thank Mary Baumgard, our statewide organizer, for being our technology wizard, for handling the question and answer portion, and for finding this beautiful Jewish artwork that you'll see on the slides as we go through this evening. So for each of the questions that we're addressing, you'll see a slide on the screen of what we're asking Sally and Bob to address as we move through those. And before we start, we're going to start with something very traditional, but in a very untraditional way. So you'll hear Sally and Bob talking in a moment about the shofar, which is a ram's horn, and you'll hear about the importance of that tradition. I'm just going to start with a very quick video here, and this is Sally's grandson Spencer holding the shofar, and he's going to play it for you. And as soon as he's done, we'll start our program. Thanks so much for joining us. I think he did an amazing job. So we turn it over to you, Sally and Bob. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Ann, and thanks, Spencer. Boy, you know, we were talking about, should we get a professional shofar blower or should we get Sally's grandson? And we were all voting for Sally's grandson because we thought that he did an awesome job, and that was a great way of starting the holiday. Well, this evening, we're going to be sharing a little bit about two of the most important days on the Jewish calendar, the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And for most non-Jews, when you think of a Jewish holiday, probably Hanukkah comes immediately to mind. I know that certainly happened when I was a kid growing up. But as it turns out, Hanukkah is actually a relatively minor holiday, as a few of you may know out there. And it really grew in visibility because of its proximity to Christmas and New Year's. This year, Rosh Hashanah, which literally means head of the year, begins the evening of Friday, September 18th. It concludes at dusk on Saturday, September 19th for Reform Jews, and on Sunday evening, September 20th for Conservative and Orthodox Jews. Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement, follows 10 days later on the evening of Sunday, September 27th, concluding the following evening. With Rosh Hashanah, Jews mark the beginning of the new year 5781 on the Jewish calendar. And that's based on the date when the Bible tells us that God created the world. Jewish holidays are based on the Hebrew calendar. It's a lunar calendar, so their exact dates on our Western calendars can vary by a month or more. That means that the holidays are really never on the same day from one year to another. Sally?
Thank you, Bob. So we'll start with Rosh Hashanah. As it's been said, we begin the holiday at night. If you think of the Bible and the beginning of the Bible with Genesis at creation, it talks about the first day and night, and then the next day and night. And God looked at it and it was good. And so based on that, our days go from sundown to sundown. So the holiday starts, the new year starts at sunset tomorrow night. We start it with a large family meal, and by that I mean lots of family and lots of food. Traditionally, there'll be chicken soup, there'll be probably a chicken dish, maybe a beef dish. It really depends. Obviously, a normal meal, salad, sides. You might end the meal with honey cake, representing a sweet year, perhaps a pomegranate, and I'll tell you about why a pomegranate later, and apples and honey. Again, the idea is we're wishing people a sweet year. So I've got an example here, and what we would do for the apples and honey is we would pass around the dish, we would dip the apple in the honey, and each person would do it and take that, and after a blessing, eat these sweet apples and honey. So from there, after the dinner, we've got services. We all go as a family after dinner. We come home, and the next day, we're back at the synagogue praying for Rosh Hashanah. You'll hear the shofar. This is our chance to hear the shofar, the ram's horn, and you saw somebody blow it, unprofessional. I can't blow it. It's like a trumpet, and it takes a certain skill to do that, which I don't have. But this is a shofar. Some people say a shofar is the first instrument. I'm thinking maybe it's a tie between a ram's horn and a drum, but who knows? The sound is like an alarm that awakens a sleeping soul. It tells us to rededicate ourselves to leading an ethical life, like the shofar blown on Sinai when the commandments were given. To me, it's a startling, piercing, mystical sound. It combines wailing and sadness. It's a Jew's heartfelt cry to God and reminds us of the binding of Isaac. At the same time, we keep in mind that the trumpet, the shofar is in the trumpet family of instruments, and trumpets are used at coronation, which reminds us of God the King. So with that, Bob, I'll turn it to you to talk about Rosh Hashanah.
Thanks, Sally. Well, as we were alluding to, Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of the creation of the world. It's also the start of the year for Jews, but it's a reflective time, not a Happy New Year kind of thing that people would do on January 1st. The allegory is that each of us comes before God on Rosh Hashanah, and we are all individually judged. God makes that determination if the year to come will be a sweet year for us or not. And while everybody has free will, it also recognizes that God is all powerful and all knowing in this tradition. And on Rosh Hashanah, it is said that God inscribes our fate for the coming year in the book of life. People therefore greet one another with either Lashana Tova, which is a good year, a wish for a sweet year. Remember the apples and honey that Sally was sharing earlier, or the phrase, may you be inscribed in the book of life. Sally?
Thank you, Bob. So there are 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and the next holiday, Yom Kippur. And during the 10 days, we reflect on our actions of the past year and show what a more positive, better person we can be. This is a time to demonstrate that we want to be a better person and can be. I ask God for forgiveness for my sins, and God will not forgive me for my sins against other people, however. If I want forgiveness for that, I need to go directly to the person and ask for their forgiveness. Even my children, which if you think of it, for a parent to go to a child and ask for forgiveness, promise that you will try and be a better parent next year, is really a very interesting conversation, especially if your children are teenagers. But
That's a pretty humbling experience, Sally.
yes. So we do ask forgiveness, and we really do try for those 10 days to demonstrate, not just to state that we'll be better, because words alone don't suffice. So that brings us to Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, the judgment that was written in the book of life on Rosh Hashanah is sealed. And again, we start at sundown, we have a family dinner, services, and we publicly recite and repent our sins. We've had 10 days to demonstrate we can do things better. We focus on prayer during the day of Yom Kippur, repentance, and fast from the evening when we have dinner until sunset the next day. And that's a fast with not only no food, but it's no water. I was always surprised when I heard people fast. There's some Christians who fast, but they get to have water. We don't get anything. And the feeling is that this is too important of a time. This is a spiritual journey, and it's all about repentance, not on what our body needs. Often people will wear white as a sign of atonement. And then at sundown, at the end of Yom Kippur, the shofar is blown again. Our fate is sealed, or perhaps modified and sealed, and the book of life is closed.
Well, thank you very much, Sally, for going through that and explaining Yom Kippur. I wanted to take just a little bit of time to share some additional reflections on the holidays and some of the rituals. I know, Sally, you talked about the traditional Rosh Hashanah dinner. Another element during that dinner that I always look forward to is the special challah, or bread, that is baked for the holiday. And I just happen to have the one that we're going to use here tomorrow. I was asked to be really careful with this because this is actually what we're going to be eating tomorrow. But you'll notice a typical challah is usually more like looks a little bit more like a loaf of bread. This is circular. And one question that might come up is, why is there a very special circular bread that we have for the holiday of Rosh Hashanah? And really, it's to symbolize the completion, one, of another yearly cycle, but it also reminds us, if you take a look at it, of a crown, which symbolizes God's majesty. And I think that's a very wonderful tradition that we always enjoy. It's also a little bit sweeter than the traditional bread as well. Another important ritual for me is putting on my talit, or prayer shawl, for the evening services at the start of Yom Kippur, and hearing the deeply moving theme of Kol Nidre, which literally means all vows, which is a time where Jews, especially looking back at the time where they had to say things and agree to things under oppression that they really did not want to. And it's a recognition of that. And that's played in the congregation. I know at our congregation, it's played on a cello, and it is just very deeply moving and haunting. I did bring my talit, which ordinarily I would be wrapped in on Yom Kippur. So you can see it a little bit. And you'll notice that each of the corners has one of these long threads associated with this. These are called tzitzit. And further, there's about 8 individual threads and 5 knots on them. And that's kind of an interesting tradition as well. First of all, you would wrap yourself in this for the holiday of Yom Kippur and during the daytime services for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And it's kind of a way of creating a separate sacred space when you are wrapped in your talit. But kind of an interesting fact on that is that when you take a look at Jewish tradition, there's a lot of it that embraces what's called numerology. So each letter, each alphabet, each letter in the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, has its own equivalent number associated with it. And according to Jewish tradition, there are 613 different commandments that are in the Torah, which are the first 5 books of both the Christian and the Hebrew Bible, sometimes called the 5 books of Moses. Well, it turns out that when you add up the numeric value of the letters in the word tzitzit, those were the those threads, the fringes that we showed you, that adds up to 600. You look at the number of knots on each of those, that's 5, and then it turns out there's 8 threads, so 8, so you get 613, exactly the number of commandments that are in the Torah. And these sort of things are just really exciting for people who are Jewish scholars, and it's like, wow, how did that happen? At any rate, so that's one of the interesting facts about those tzitzit that are attached to the prayer shawl or the talit. Well, the last thing I just wanted to share with you is how Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and the days in between provide an important reminder to me that it's time to do an annual accounting, essentially like an internal audit of what I've done well and where I've missed the mark. Judaism talks about sin, as other religions do, but in a different sort of way, because we don't really have a concept of original sin. An analogy to just show this to you is that often shared by our rabbis is that that of an archer, somebody who's shooting arrows at a target. And in some things that we do during the year, perhaps our charitable giving, maybe we might be very close to the target. But in other areas, maybe how we treat the stranger or how we treat our coworkers or something, maybe we're not getting so close to the target at all. Well, during this period of reflection, especially between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and on the day of Yom Kippur, both inside and outside of the synagogue, we try to think about all aspects of our life, and we note those areas where we've missed the mark. We did not hit the target very well. And where do we need to improve, forgive, and mend fences? And like that archer, where do we recalibrate our behavior so we can do a better job of hitting that mark in the next year? Sally?
Thank you. And for me, I think about family a lot. On Friday night, we can't get together in person, but we're going to do a Zoom, and we'll all come together. We'll do some blessings over the bread, the wine, the apples and honey, and so on. We'll still be together, at least that way. And again, these symbols for a sweet year, the shofar blowing, are all very special to me. So I was asked to talk about what, well, let me also talk about, since you talked about the talit and the 613, let me mention, you see a pomegranate picture there. And the question is, why is there a pomegranate? And we've been told that, and I think I've tried counting before, but supposedly in every pomegranate, there's 613 seeds. So it's very special for that night. So if you have something you want to do, count the seeds in a pomegranate. So we were asked to talk a little bit about what it is that you can, as an ally, do to support your Jewish friends. And so I came up with a list of 5. The first of them is, yes, it's a new year, but it's not Happy New Year, like December 31st and New Year's. It's not a Happy New Year. It's a time for reflection, not celebration. Number 2, don't invite a Jewish person for lunch on Yom Kippur. They're fasting. Number 3, make it easy for people who are Jewish to take the day off to observe their holiday. Don't schedule a meeting or a gathering. They should be at services, being with family, and praying. Number 4, don't look at someone oddly if they ask for your forgiveness. And lastly, wish that they and their loved ones are inscribed and sealed for a happy, healthy, and sweet new year. Bob, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Ellie. Just an additional quick note on one more important holiday that comes up very quickly after Yom Kippur, 5 days later, actually. And I like the title, What Are the Wooden Structures I Sometimes See in the Fall? People's homes or synagogues like this. Well, it turns out that this is referring to Sukkot, and this is a sukkah. Sukkot is sometimes referred to as the festival of booths or tabernacles. It's one of the 3 major harvest or pilgrimage festivals where Jews in the time of the temple would travel to Jerusalem to give their offerings at the temple. The other 2 major harvest festivals are Shavuot, which is usually in May or June, and Pesach, or Passover, which most of you are probably familiar with, which is usually in the March-April period. Well, the holiday of Sukkot marks the 40-year period of wandering in the desert, and because of that, Jews will often put these up in their yards, a sukkah, which is a temporary structure. It has to have a roof that's open to the sky, and they follow the biblical commandment to dwell in it by eating or even sleeping in the sukkah. And last thing I'd say is the holiday of Sukkot also supposedly was the holiday of the final harvest and a type of Thanksgiving that supposedly our Thanksgiving holiday was somewhat modeled after. Well, I just wanted to close with one of my favorite readings from our High Holiday services that speaks as to why the ritual by itself, in particular on Yom Kippur of fasting, is not enough if it's just going through the motions, but instead that it is critical that it be infused with ethical and moral intention and the notion of the pursuit of justice. And for this, one of the sections we read on that day is Isaiah, and I wanted to just read a short section beginning Isaiah 58:3. Isaiah begins in this section by repeating what the Israelites have said about God not paying attention to them during their fasting. And it reads as follows: "Why, when we fasted, did you not see? When we starved our bodies, did you pay no heed?" And the answer, because on your fast day, you see to your business and oppress all your laborers, because you fast in strife and contention, and you strike with the wicked fist. Your fasting today is not such as to make your voice heard on high. Is such the fast I desire, a day for men to starve their bodies? Is it bowing the head like the bulrush and lying in sackcloth and ashes? Do you call that a fast, a day when Adonai is favorable? No, this is the fast I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of the yoke, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe them and not to ignore your own kin. Sally?
Thank you. At this point, we have just a few minutes. We want to open it up. Do you want to do the cantor piece now or open it to a few questions? And what would you like to do?
We'll do the cantor at the end.
Okay.
Bob, Sally, thank you for that wonderful presentation, for sharing your knowledge and experiences with us. Again, as Anne mentioned, we have time for a couple of questions before we head for our final clip showing. And again, if we don't get to address all questions now, please feel free. My email is maryb@jrlc.org. Write your questions and we will make sure that we are able to address those. So
we had one question that came in from Karen asking, you've made reference to a number of things, and these may be terms that a number of our members aren't familiar with, and asked if we could put together a list of some of the things that you spoke about. And I said we'd be happy to do that, but recognizing that these are the high holidays for our Jewish board members, we won't be asking you to work on that until after Yom Kippur has passed and you've been allowed to return to work and catch up and those kinds of things. So for those listening, absolutely, we will do that. And there's such a wonderful, rich tradition that it's, I'm always learning more as well. So, but we welcome any other questions. If people have them, feel free to type them in the Q&A piece.
And while we're waiting, Bob and I want to wish all of you, our wish for you is Lishana Tova. May the coming year be a good year to you and your family, a sweet year, and may you and your loved ones be inscribed and sealed in the book of life.
Thank you, Sally. Sally, I've heard one thing, and Bob, I've often heard that as friends are celebrating Yom Kippur, one other greeting is to wish them an easy fast. Is that true as well?
Bob, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so that is a traditional thing to do. Fasting can be very difficult sometimes. I like a revised version of that, Mary. I'm glad you brought that up because I actually had that in, but I cut it for time. And I like the revised version, which is to wish them a very meaningful fast. But same idea is that you want to encourage people on the fast day to make sure that it's something that's spiritual for them. So that's very good question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for offering that. Again, just to be mindful of everyone's time, I just want to thank Bob and Sally again for joining us. And I'm going to pass it back over to Anne, who will share a final clip and a final offering.
So I want to not only thank Sally and Bob, but to again wish all of you that are watching a wonderful new year as we move ahead, and may all of our names be inscribed in the book of life. I'd specifically like to point out the many ways we see commonality between our traditions, and we talk about fasting in the Christian traditions during Lent, and we certainly talk about the month of Ramadan with Muslims. We talk about the different places in our liturgical year, whatever term might be used in your faith tradition, where we're doing an examination of conscience, where we're really looking at how we can be a better version of ourselves and be the person that our faith tradition calls us to be. And the more we see this in other traditions, it underscores the importance of that and making things right with ourselves and with our God and with our world. I would like to offer an invitation or share an invitation. The Congregation of Adath Jeshurun, which is located in Minnetonka, has invited all of you, all of our network, to join them in a virtual services, both for Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, and we'll have a link to that on our webpage. So if you'd like to see those services, please join them. And if you talk to your Jewish friends, they will talk about, in some congregations, actually figuring out who gets a seat for services can sometimes be a big deal. So maybe we'll have our people talk about that at another session. I'd like to close with a clip, and it's actually from Isaiah. It's a different translation than the one that Bob used, but the same, some of the same portions. And so this is from the Hebrew Bible, which is, as Bob said, similar to our Bible in many ways, and certainly the first 5 books are the same. So this is a different translation, but this is Eli Newell, and he is going to start by reading in English, and then he will be cantoring in Hebrew. And he actually shows you what his cantor book looks like. So you can see that. And so I would like to welcome Eli. We'll have the full clip on our webpage, so he has a little bit of background before he goes into this. So if you'd like to see more, please look on our webpage this week. Thanks again for joining us.
Build a highway, clear a road, remove all obstacles from my people's path. The wicked are like a choppy sea, never at rest, whose waters are dark with mud. There is no rest, says my God, for the wicked. On your fast day, you're thinking about your business. You're oppressing your workers. Your fast is marred with ego and argument. You strike with a wicked fist. Your fasting today will not make your voice heard on high. Is this the fast I want? A day for people to starve their bodies? Do I want you to bow your heads like the reeds, to mortify your bodies with coarse cloth and ashes? You call that a fast, a day when Adonai will look upon you with favor? No, this is the fast I want. Unlock the chains of wickedness. Untie the knots of servitude. Let the oppressed go free, their bonds broken. Share your bread with the hungry and welcome the homeless into your home. When you see the naked, clothe them. All people are your kin. Do not ignore them. Then you will shine like the dawn, and healing will rise up within you. Your righteousness will vindicate you. The presence of God will guard your safety. Then when you call, Adonai will answer. When you cry out, God will say, here I am. So now I am going to read for you a little bit from the book of Isaiah, and this is the scripture that we read on Yom Kippur. Here, I'll just actually show it to you so you can see it. I'm going to start down at the bottom of this page here, and I'll just go into the first couple of lines in the first couple paragraphs. Amen ve'amar solu solu panu darech harimu michshol miderech ami ki cho amar ram v'nisa shochen ad v'kadosh shemo marom v'kadosh eshkon ve'et daka ushefal ruach L'hachayot ruach shefalim, u'lechachayot lev nidkaim. Ki lo le'olam ariv, velo lenetzach ekzof. Ki ruach milfanai atov, u'neshamot ani asiti. Ba'oven bitzo, katsafti ve'ekehu, haster ve'ekzof, vayelech shovav b'derech libo. Derachav ra'iti ve'erpa'ehu, ve'anachnu, va'ashalam nichumim, lo, ve'la'avelav boreh. Ni'ov sifatayim, shalom shalom, lerachok v'lakarov, amar Adonai urifativ. There's a little taste of Isaiah for you, and I will end by just saying what we say to each other on Rosh Hashanah is Shana Tova, to a good and sweet new year, and on Yom Kippur we say Gamar Chatima Tova, which basically is saying, may you be inscribed in the book of life, wishing you a pleasant and a good inscription. Thanks so much, everybody. Hope you have a good day.
Thank you so much for joining us. We all wish you a good day and a good week and a wonderful season.